Change management is a big thing. People don't like change. Actually, the majority of people don't like change. I think the last statistic I saw was 87% of people actively move away from change. So you've got, I guess, the 13% which are trying to drive these new ways of working and pushing these new digital systems into businesses to make them better. The hardest part is getting everyone in that group to buy into it and then employ it.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Eric Jones. I'm here with Tim Walmsley, the CEO and founder of BenchOn. Tim, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I wanted to dive right in and ask you to describe BenchOn in a few sentences.
Sure. So we're an Australian startup that is solving employee underutilisation in contract-based industries, and we do that by matching, or through our business-to-business platform, which matches one company's idle staff who is in between project or contracts, and we match them to short-term contracts with other companies looking for specialist support or surge support. So in that way, they manage the peaks and troughs of the business cycle with paid contracts for their staff in the troughs when there's not enough work, and then access to the highest quality professionals in the peak when they've got too much work on, not enough staff.
Was there a moment in your work history that sort of provided the genesis for the idea behind that business?
Yeah, I was working as the National Director of Strategy and Business Development for a US aerospace consulting firm that was just sort of finding its feet here in Australia. And during that time, I saw, so many people, good people, losing their jobs because, the contract ended and there was nothing else for them, so they had to let the staff go, or businesses shutting down because they tried to keep their staff but ended up financially crippling the business. And there was one situation where I saw a company that had 3 niche engineers that they'd trained for a specific contract. They won that contract. At the end of the first year, when it came to the contract renewal, the government had budgetary issues, so they put a pause on that contract for 2 months. And that was just long enough that that company couldn't keep those staff just sitting there for 2 months. So they put all of those staff on unpaid leave, and those staff had mortgages and kids, so they couldn't just not get paid. So they went and got new jobs. 6 weeks later, the government came back and said, we're ready to go, but the company didn't have the staff. So that company lost 3 loyal staff that they'd invested in. The company then lost a 10-year government contract that was very lucrative, and then the government had to delay their project by 18 months. And it was your typical lose-lose-lose situation, and that didn't make sense to me. And so when I asked someone about it, they said, well, that's just the way industry is. We try to survive through the peaks and troughs by, getting through the troughs as quickly as we can in the hope that another peak's coming around the corner. And that didn't sit right with me. And then a week later, I was sitting inside a very large organisation's sourcing department, and one of their people slammed the phone down and went, I'm so frustrated with the government. I told them that they would need systems engineers 2 months ago, and now they've rung me and said they need them this morning. And he goes, I don't just have a bench of high quality people sitting here waiting for their phone call. And that's when I went, I know where they are. They're hidden inside other companies not being utilised. So I created a platform to match those two up.
To tap into that. You obviously have founded your own business, but before that you spent some time in the military as an officer. How did that experience in the military translate into your role now as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, there was a couple of ways. So firstly, the military teaches you how to think, not what to think. So you think through any type of military scenario, it's the most complex situation you could possibly find yourself in. It's hard, but the way they just teach you to break down that problem into bite-sized chunks, come up with a workable plan, and then apply it. And to me, that's exactly like business. Business is complex and unknown, and you don't know what to do next. So the way of breaking that down, the same way I would break down an infantry attack on a hill, is the same way I broke down my business and applied my plan. You just take, instead of looking at enemy, you then look at competitors and what they're doing. And instead of looking at the environment and what hills there are and where the creeks are, you're looking at what the market's doing and what are the trends, and you apply it all in the same way. But the second thing was obviously the work ethic. Being an entrepreneur is a lot of work. It's really hard. And you're sometimes doing, 20-hour days, 7 days a week, and things go wrong all the time. But I think the way that the military trained me just to keep going no matter what, and push through those barriers was able to help me get it off the ground.
Talking about, taking the next hill, I think one of the things that everybody's, thinking about is the future of work, and what that looks like. Given you're squarely in the middle of all that, how do you see that evolving over the next couple of years?
I'm actually really excited with the future of work. I think what we're seeing is work is changing to the point where people can tailor their work to suit their requirements. So you'll have, full-time work, part-time work, casual. You've got freelancing, gig work. Stay-at-home parents can still make money on the side while their kids are asleep, whereas an aerospace engineer that's just come out of university can then go and get a full-time job in one of those big companies and get trained and mentored through their frameworks to become the best professional they can be. Someone who's spent 30 or 40 years building their reputation and becoming the best in industry can then stop working for the man and go and work on their own as a freelancer and make a lot of money that way. So to me, the future of work is highly tailored to the way you would like to work, and I think that's an exciting thing.
What does your gut tell you about younger generations and the likelihood of them becoming their own bosses, of them becoming entrepreneurs?
I think there's two parts to that. The first part is I think sometimes the young people coming through at the moment expect a lot for not much in return. They expect to come out of university and be running a whole department or being a CEO of a company, and they don't realize that takes years of experience and, to get to that point. So I think firstly they need to be mentored in what to expect. But also there are many more opportunities. Anybody nowadays can start a startup and be the CEO of their own company. But I was having this talk at a startup accelerator the other day, and he was saying, the new generation of CEOs, some of them have never had a job. They started their business in high school. So how then do they know how to set up a successful business and do things like financial planning and, forecasting and all of those things that businesses need? How do they do that? So there's a massive education side to it. So yes, I think that there's a lot of opportunity for young people to jump to that level, but it means that there is a massive curve of education that they have to keep on all the time.
So at the other end of the spectrum, it's not a surprise to you, obviously. Every industry, every business is in the throes of some type of digital transformation. What do you see as the challenges and opportunities as companies sort of sort through what that means?
Change management is a big thing. People don't like change. Actually, the majority of people don't like change. I think the last statistic I saw was 87% of people actively move away from change. So you've got, I guess, the 13% which are trying to drive these new ways of working and pushing these new digital systems into businesses to make them better. The hardest part is getting everyone in that group to buy into it and then employ it. I had a client the other day who couldn't send me a non-disclosure agreement. He had to print it out and then mail it to me. And I mean, that was done through DocuSign. All he had to do was click a button, but he wasn't up with that type of thing. So I guess the change management, I think, is the hardest. How do you convey the benefits of this new system and then train them to use it? I mean, human beings always go to their default setting. Like we were talking about coffee before. When you walk into a cafe, there's like 45 different types of coffee that you could have. Yet you go to your default setting and I'll have a flat white. So it makes it easier. It means that cognitively I'm not stressing over my choices. I just want something easy. And that's how most people work these days. So we need to break them out of their default settings into more positive ways of working.
Social purpose. We're seeing a lot of companies, some companies actually are built around that, like Patagonia, let's say, and Tom's as examples. Other companies are sitting there on the sidelines. Where do you weigh in on that whole discussion, and how important do you think purpose is in a business today?
I think having a greater purpose other than the transactions of your business is essential these days. Everyone is flooded with marketing messages. Like if I need, whatever I need, an architect or whatever service I need, I know I can Google it and I can find someone. So I don't want to be bombarded with advertising about those things. What I want to do is find something that I can relate to, that I feel like my transaction is actually helping a bigger cause. That's particularly true for millennials coming through. They all want to see a bigger impact in the way that they do their commercial interactions. So for us at BenchOn, we are very focused on social impact, with our social impact being the creation of new full-time jobs for the economy and stabilising employment. I think if you don't have a greater impact, then I think you're missing out on a large part of the market. We always say everything we do is a win-win-win. A win for us, a win for our clients, and then a win for the economy or the environment or, you know, some type of social impact. And if you don't have that third win, I think you are shortchanging yourself.
You said that you're always looking at sort of the new technologies coming down the pike. What are some of the ones that excite you the most?
I think, you know, when you talk about like machine learning and AI and blockchain and all of those, I'm not 100% on all of those and how they're going to be used in my business. They're something that we continue to research and see how it unfolds and see how other people are using it. I don't actually have one type of technology in our sort of service area. I mean, you've got, you know, the automation of drones for land transport and air transport and all those sorts of things, which I find really exciting. But in terms of business, I don't have really a key technology that I think is the next big thing that's going to disrupt.
So on the topic of technology, you know, you were recently talking about professional services companies and how perhaps they could begin to view automation in a less threatening way, and how it could actually help them scale, improve margins, grow their business, increase productivity. Tell us a little bit more about that and what you were thinking there.
Yeah, I think it's just the way you put it. You know, up until now, we've tried to make ourselves more efficient, and we do that through processes so that a person can do something quite complex really quickly by following the bouncing ball. So we've spent decades training ourselves to act like a computer. Now the computers have caught up. We can now let the computers do all that work, which is the boring work anyway, and now we can go back to the more exciting work about developing human interactions and relationships. People say often that businesses don't work with businesses, people work with people, and it's the one you have a relationship with or you believe in what they're doing. So you can go back to, like I was saying before about the social impact, you can go back to selling your story and creating social impact rather than sitting there and ticking boxes and doing data entry and all of those boring things behind a computer. So to me, I think that that's really exciting, and the increase in human interaction will be the next evolution in a professional services industry, which is if you don't have the time to go out and create that human interaction, then you'll be left behind. Look at automated telephone services. Just because they could be automated doesn't mean that we've employed that, because they did. All the telephone automation services went 100% automated, and then everyone realized how much that sucked, you know, and we just wanted to talk to a human. So nowadays, automation has its place where it can direct you to the right person to take your call, which is more efficient, and then that person can build a relationship with you. And I think that's just, I guess, a microcosm of what industry will experience on a bigger level. Examining
that through the lens of B2B companies, which, you know, I would say historically people don't view as being particularly human. How do you in fact ensure that, let's say, your business always maintains that human face?
Yeah, and we still treat businesses, it's about connecting with the people in those businesses. A business still has business requirements, which is not one person's particular desires, but a business is run by people. So if you tap into those people and connect those people together, then you'll have better success. So that's why we've created the BenchOn community of like-minded companies that can support businesses in any issue that they have. Because once you get businesses thinking outside of their little zone of influence and start thinking collectively as an industry, that's when true collaboration happens, and companies can exist and create a niche for themselves and collaboratively work with others for the benefit of the entire industry. So that industry can then become more productive, and then more work gets thrown at it, and there's more space then for those businesses. I think gone are the days where businesses can put up walls and just go, this is mine, no one touch it. We have to break down those walls and start operating collectively. And if you look at it from a country perspective, let's take defence industry for an example. it is in our best interest to make sure defence industry is the most productive and the most efficient, even from my singular business. So we need to start thinking that way. How can I support industry as well as making sure that my business grows sustainably?
You had a really sort of interesting counterintuitive point around, the increasing rates of freelance employment, where you said, I'm not so sure it's such a good idea. In fact, I think there are many more benefits with people being employed by companies. Could you, explore that with our viewers a little bit more?
Yeah, casualisation of the workforce has been going on for a while now, and some people look at that through the prism of, well, that's a new trend, that's what people want. We're all going to be independent freelancers at that point. But I mean, just because there's a trend doesn't mean it's going to, extrapolate to the end of where that's going. I think instead that is a symptom of a problem in our industry, and that is because since the rise of project management and people start looking at tasks with a definite start and a definite end point, that then led to a contract-based industry where everything was run with the timelines of those projects in contracts. And then the cost became too high in those down periods to keep people, which is why we've gone to more of a freelance option. I can count more people that I've talked to that just go, I don't want to be an independent contractor. I would rather have a job. I just can't find one. I can't find one that's stable. And you can see it in the news. We've got mass redundancies from all of our big brands because, they're putting in these new automations, but they're not dealing with it effectively, and people are then thrown out and they have to do whatever they can to put food on the table. So they take contracts wherever they can. Right. So I actually think that by using our staff more productively and reducing those overheads and those costs of the in-betweens, we can not only create job stability for our employees so that they can grow and be mentored and trained into the best professionals possible, but those companies then have more cash flow so that they can hire more people and grow their business. And I know that sounds counterintuitive, which is what I was saying, which is by using our own staff more, we can actually create new jobs. But when you look at it in the breakdown of overheads and cash flow, it actually makes sense. Mm-hmm. So if we fix the problem in industry, allow companies to reduce those costs and use their people better, then we will find more stable jobs coming out.
One of the questions we love asking is a book that you'd recommend to our viewers.
Yep.
Anything that comes to mind on that?
The book I'm reading at the moment is called Get Your Shit Together by Sarah Knight, and it's all about how do you maximize the productivity of your day when there's so much going on. I'm one of those people that I have the bad habit of, if I know that there's a big task and I'm procrastinating on it, I'll do all the little tasks, and then I'll check my emails, and then I'll take some phone calls, and then the end of the day comes and I go, I didn't get that done. I would have loved to. And then the next day the whole thing starts again. Mm-hmm. So this is all about refocusing that and saying, well, why don't you break it down into your must-dos? What must I do today? Then do them first. And then all those little meaningless tasks come at the end, and you finish the day feeling like you've completed a productive day. You feel better, there's less anxiety, and you're more productive the next day. So,
are there any tech tools that you use to help you with that?
Actually, not particularly a tech tool. I've just learned to use my calendar better. Mm-hmm. I now schedule everything. So every Sunday night, I schedule out my entire week from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And that includes, I schedule in time with the kids, I schedule in time with my partner, I schedule in, having lunch breaks and food breaks and thinking breaks and, everything I could possibly want, so that I know for that week, everything that needs to get done is going to get done, as long as I follow that schedule. So I had to become very, very good at that, just to reduce the anxiety of, if you don't schedule, you don't know what's coming up, you're like, oh, how am I going to get all this done? Whereas if it's broken down and laid out,
that's awesome.
It's much easier.
Tim, it was great having you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Cheers.